After a couple of successful days in the field, I am now at Allen Geomatics, where I'm going to get with Jeff, and we're going to review the data that we've collected so far. And again, he's got the traditional data, I've got the drone data, and we're just going to give it a preliminary review and see where we are at this moment. Well, thanks for having me in here today, man. Looking forward to comparing the data. We're not quite at that point yet. I mean, we can do a little bit of a comparison, I know. I definitely still have some processing to do. I know you guys still have a little bit left in the field. So yeah, let's talk about the data that you have going on.
We've got about 3 days worth of field work done. The latest raw file here, you can see just shows the rod height, horizontal angle, slope distance, vertical angle, and our description there, so everything falls into the right layers. So you can see out of this maybe 15-acre area here, we've covered a good 2/3 of it or so. And you're looking at a good 40 hours of man hours.
Do you want to maybe explore some of that with us right quick?
Okay, so we can see the yellow and green lines here are our contours, the way the program just guessed at what points to connect for the 10. The gray lines connecting each point show the 10. You can see these orange shots here, sort of pink shots. That's the edge of pavement of the road coming in, and the center line of the road would be in the crown there. So that's going to be an important feature for the brake lines to get the crown of the road to come in correctly. Here's a good example. So from 972 to 975, the system didn't just by chance connect those two. So when I draw this brake line in here, it actually adjusts contours to show the crown of that road there.
I can already see some areas where I'm definitely going to have a lot more information to sort through. You know, it's kind of the opposite of what you have going on. I have to sort of start taking information away and out of the picture to where you're adding information to help complete. It's like I've got too much. And so we'll be able to look at a point cloud today for sure, but before I can actually start creating surfaces, there's more work I have to do to the data to get there. And so. As I mentioned, I've still got some processing left to do. So I still get excited looking at these point clouds just because of the information that is gathered is pretty incredible. And a couple of things to point out here. We've got these lines at the top, and what this is the trajectory data from the drone. So this is the path that the drone flew. And we use terrain follow, so you can see here in the trajectory data that it actually rises and falls with the terrain that we have over here. So that's a pretty cool feature because it keeps the accuracy consistent for the point cloud. Because if you were to fly at a consistent height, and then the ground rises and falls, you're going to end up with different densities, different accuracies. So this is a really cool feature to work with. Now to dive on in here a little bit, you can see our power poles, we can see the overhead utilities. They're pulling through there pretty well. Let's see here, here's the creek that we kind of went into. So we are sort of up in this area. So what we can do right quick is do a cut slice of that area and see just how well we got in there. There you go, but you can see pretty well the slope that we're following. We've got some areas here where it looks like we've got some gaps, just probably due to the vegetation above, and so we got a pretty hefty tree right there. But then we get on down here at the creek, and there's gonna be some areas where we do pretty well as far as grabbing the creek banks, but one of the things that I noticed is that the creek was pretty much on the edge of the woods, and typically the edge of the woods is where it's thickest because that's where it gets the most sunshine and everything. So that's usually an area that's sort of problematic for us. But if it's an area where the terrain doesn't change much as far as relief or anything, it's not that big a deal that we missed that information. But here, that we have creek banks and there is heavy vegetation around it, there's going to be some areas where we didn't get through. But there are some areas that we did. So what we'd have to do is through processing, we'll whittle everything down, get rid of the vegetation, just have that ground information in there, and so then the creek bank will become a lot more apparent, and so then you can go through and see where you did well, where you didn't, and see if you need additional data or if you've got enough.
I'm enjoying just watching you maneuver around in there. It's easy to pick out the features that we surveyed, that we talked about when we were looking at my data. This road right here, you can see a clear definition, you can see the crown in there, the same thing I was talking about. You've picked all of that up. This experience has really helped me realize how close my small company is to considering actually getting a micro-drone using LiDAR to help us with our topos, rather than relying on everything on the ground.
Yeah, no, it's like we were saying, it's just another tool in the toolbox for sure, and it has its places where it really shines. Well, we're at a pretty good stopping point. I definitely appreciate your time this week and the time of your guys as well, and their willingness to kind of cooperate with being on camera and everything. For me, it was a great time going down memory lane and spending time with you, sharing stories and whatnot. Now that we actually have the two different data sets to compare, I'm really excited to see kind of where we are with that point once we get there. I really enjoyed hanging out with Jeff and the rest of the crew from Allen Geomatics. So while they were in the field still collecting data, I was able to go ahead and further process the LiDAR data that I had collected using MD Infinity. So let's go ahead and dive right in and see how the two data sets compare. Diving right into the data, what we have on screen right now is the orthomosaic from the site. And what we're going to do is go ahead and compare some of the conventional locations to the point cloud. So what we have here is the ground data, which is the brown dots, and the blue dots are the sampled locations of Jeff's work that I have pulled out. So if we go ahead and compare, or do a quick cut slice of the area that we're looking at, so you can see right here, Jeff's location is not quite surrounded by the ground data that we would like. But if you look at the ground points between or either side of Jeff's point, you can see that we're really close to that data. Because overall, I think we've got a great data set. So jumping right into comparing surfaces. And so overall, things are looking pretty good now. I spent some time with the cloud after MD Infinity to get things cleaned up a little bit further. I was able to generate some contours from that information. And when we compare this to the conventional locations, so we're gonna go ahead and jump in here. You can see Jeff's locations is the green and yellow here. Right here at these breaks is more or less where he has his locations. And you can see that our contour lines, they line up really well in a lot of areas. But there's also some areas where things deviate a little bit. And say, for instance, down in here. And that's more or less just because of the additional information that we're able to collect with the LiDAR versus the conventional location methods. So this isn't to say that one's necessarily better than the other. It's just totally two different tools that you can go to as far as what it takes to get a job done. One more thing I'd like to go over is just what we were able to cover in the time that was spent out there. This is the overall site that I was able to scan in the 23-minute or so flight that we had out there in the field. This is about 48 acres total, and comparing that to what Jeff was able to put together in about 5 days is this area right here. So again, we have about 48 acres that I was able to knock out with a 23 or so minute flight. And then we have here about, I think it was about 15 acres that was topoed over the course of about 5 days conventionally. So just right there, you can see the time savings from the field aspect and data collection, as well as just the richness of data that we're able to collect in that short period of time. When you're dealing with so much data, typically there is a little bit more on the back end of working with the LiDAR data than it is conventional data. Typically, the detailed information that you get from the LiDAR data is a great resource to have throughout a project.